Well, hello. Today I'd like to welcome you to my review of the Esterbrook SJ, a vintage pen. If videos like this interest you, where I talk about fountain pens both new and old and at all price points, I would invite you to subscribe. And do you have a favorite Esterbrook? I will tell you about what mine is, or maybe you have a favorite Esterbrook nib. Let us know down in the comments. So let's take a look at the pen. So this is the Esterbrook, and I keep wanting to say the wrong name. This is the Esterbrook SJ. The J, I've heard two possible explanations. I've told that the J can refer to the jewel, or it could refer to the fact that the pressure bar is shaped like a J. I've heard both explanations. But the big thing is the size difference. So let's take a quick cruise of this pen, and then I'll give you a size comparison. So it has that same very nice Esterbrook finish. It comes with a, oops, wrong way. And of course it's a lever filler, which means it's very easy to fix. Here we have Esterbrook, made in USA. On the cap, really nothing except for the clip, where again it says Esterbrook and there's a little hole. And then the finials are these jewels. Screw cap pen. A little small, as you might be able to tell from how it sits in my hand. The nib I have on it because they were interchangeable. Mine is what's called a relief fine nib. It's a 9314F. So relief means it's oblique and then the fine, so the effect is subtle. So you might be wondering what makes this different from some other Esterbrooks. Well, I don't have every single model. The one I keep confusing it with is the LJ, which is a thin model. There's an Esterbrook J, and then there's a pocket purse pen, let's call it. So first, here in the center, I will lay down my Esterbrook SJ. Beside it, the Esterbrook J. And then on the other side, I will put my Esterbrook Pastel Purse Pen. And I have reviewed both of these, so I'll try to remember to put links in the video description. So you can immediately see there is quite a length difference from here to here. This is sort of in the middle. The LJ, which I do not own, is this length, but thinner, probably about this thickness. If I uncap them, of course they all have all sorts of different nibs. Looks like I have some kind of a flex nib on the LJ, or I'm sorry, on the regular J. On the SJ, sorry, I keep doing that in my brain. I've got, of course, relief nib. And I have a much broader relief nib in the purse pen. So again, you can see they're shorter. I can write with this one unposted. These two are uncomfortable to use unposted. So of course you're here to see the SJ. I'll try to maybe use a mnemonic in my brain and call it the short J rather than the slender J, which may help me remember that. So of course my Esterbrook has a relief fine nib in it. One of the fun things, which I won't demonstrate on this one, I'll demonstrate on the big J, is the nibs are sold so that you could just go and screw in a different one. So I guess at one time you could go to the store and you could just pick, I don't have them out here anymore, but you could just pick your favorite nib. And fun fact, bonus fact, if you buy the modern Esterbrook SD, they do sell an adapter so that you can fit these old nibs onto it. I've also done a video on that pen. The ink in this is Colorverse. Oh, see, I'm uncomfortable. If I post it, it's a reasonably respectable length, but it just doesn't feel like it posts securely. So the ink in this is Colorverse Interstellar Space, which is a very dark green. Not quite the color I think of when I hear the words interstellar space, but whatever. It's their ink, not mine. This, although they do sell flex nibs, of course this is not a flex nib, and your mileage may vary. I actually, the one that's on the J I had very good luck with. The one that's on my Esterbrook SD, not so much. And right there you can see why I do this asterisk, because it'll show the reliefness of a nib. And then wetness and flow. Again, your mileage may, wow, wetness. Your mileage may vary. No trouble keeping up. If I had that flex nib from the SD, not so much. And you can get these at varying costs. You know, if you just buy a fine nib, they're pretty low cost. If you get something more exotic, of course, the more expensive it'll be. The smear test. I feel like one of these days I need to do a video that's just different Esterbrook nibs that I have. But, oops, sorry. But my selection is somewhat limited. But for what I have, it might be worth doing. Do that on another weekend like this one when I have lots of extra free time. I'm always unsure what to do with an oblique nib. Oh, actually, I mean, it's scratchier, but it's really not bad. About the same nib width, too. And I found a lot of these Esterbrook nibs also are untipped. Make of that what you will. Let's do a longer form quote. And I had a quote picked out from Charles Darwin, but it's only a sentence long. And I just feel like with this pen, I want a longer quote. So let's just throw the channel under the bus. So, as you can see, I had no trouble with that. It's kind of enjoyable. It's not my smoothest pen by any stretch, but it does a good job. It comes out cleanly. It's not really scratchy. It's just not my smoothest nib. And that Relief Fine just gives it a subtle character that's kind of fun. I suppose I'm part of this, those who manipulate this unseen mechanism, trying to get you to buy vintage pens instead of new pens. Whoops. Let the cat out of the bag there. But anyway, one other test I always like to do while I'm down here is the Peer-Gustafson test, a world-famous test to see how a pen behaves under extreme writing conditions. And I think it passed the Peer-Gustafson test. One other important... Oh, we got a friend here we got to remove. See, I always carry my Lamy 2000 around with me. Another important test is the pocket test. How quickly and easily does it fit in my pocket? And as you can see, no trouble at all. It is clip it over. Yep. Maybe even a little too loose. Who knows? So all in all, I like the Esterbrook models. And if you're interested in getting into vintage pens, Esterbrook is a good entry-level vintage pen because they're usually fairly easy to repair. If your nib is damaged, you can buy new nibs, or try to straighten it. If your sack is crispy, which has been a kind of a theme with the ones I've bought, Resacking is pretty easy. If you have to put a new J bar in, which is the pressure bar, that's a pretty easy repair too. In fact, the Esterbrook J is the first pen where I ever did that. It was actually given to me as a gift, and I couldn't get it to fill for the life of me. And the person who gave it to me, well, I put a new sack in it. Well, it turned out that the J bar up in the J part at the top had cracked, so it squeezing on the pressure bar did basically nothing. So there you go. But yeah, a very good vintage pen if you want to get into it. And some people just enjoy collecting them. And I think part of the fun is the variety of nibs you can put on them. Some are fails, like the ones on my Esterbrook SJ, but that's another story. So anyway, I hope that was interesting. I heard an interesting piece of information. I couldn't find any corroborating evidence on the internet, but this is a claim that, I believe it unless it's proven to be absolutely false. Anyway, this person says that Esterbrook would donate these pens to the Indian boarding schools. Now, you might be wondering what an Indian boarding school is, so I'm going to go off on a little tangent here, but bear with me. So Indian boarding schools are thankfully no longer in existence, but that was a scheme of getting Native American children out of their house, away from their parents, away from their culture, basically to get that culture out of them and try to force them into conform with majority society. They used to exist here in North Dakota. Like I said, thankfully no longer, but they were a thing here. And spend some time on the reservations and you can see the lasting damage that they did. This particular person who told me this story about the Esterbrook said that, her family members who were there had horrible memories of these places. Now, Esterbrook, I am pretty sure, thought to themselves, hey, we're doing a good thing. We're helping out these poor kids and we're getting them some pens and we're getting a little free PR in the process. This is not a slight on Esterbrook at all, but I always, with vintage pens, part of why I like vintage pens is the history. And some pieces of history aren't very nice. And I'm sorry, the way the United States treated its Native American culture, and a lot may argue the way we still treat the Native American culture, wasn't very nice. It's one of the really, really dark parts of American history. And when you study history, and if you're studying vintage pens, you must be at least somewhat interested in history. You run into those dark places. So, that's why I felt this was worth bringing up. We could talk about other things going on in the 50s when Esterbrook was big, because, the United States had all kinds of not-so-shining moments in the 50s, and a few very shining moments, I will say that also. But you have to take the bad with the good. So, nothing more really to add about this pen. I'll be honest. Grab my pens again. I don't have any puppies, thank God. This pen, the pocket pen, almost never gets inked. For a couple reasons. One is apparently the finish is more fragile than the finish that's on this SJ, and so it has a tendency to crack around the lip of the cap. The other reason is it's just too small for me. I use the SJ a bit more, but it's not really my favorite. My favorite is the J. In fact, I'm thinking I may have to ink it up again. So, maybe something to look forward to. I have one other Esterbrook model. I'm trying to figure out what it is. I think it's a transitional model, kind of between models. So when I get that figured out, I'll do a video on that one too. But I want to thank you for watching. And if videos like this interest you, where I talk about fountain pens both new and old and at all price points, I would invite you to subscribe. And maybe you have a favorite Esterbrook model or a favorite Esterbrook nib. Let us know down in the comments. Or maybe you have, since I brought up history, maybe you have some comments about the Indian boarding schools, or just how much history plays into vintage pens. Feel free to let me know down in the comments about that too. Maybe you don't like the comments I made. Maybe you think I should leave history out altogether. Maybe you'd like to hear more history to go with these pens. Either way, let me know. I have thick skin. 21 years of teaching will do that to you. So I want to thank you for watching. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.